Let's kick off now with one of my favourite commentators, Benedict Spencer, to have a grouchathon. Good morning, Benedict.
Good morning, Alex. How are you?
Well, as you can tell, I've got a bee in my bonnet this morning. And I tell you why. I thought it would be a good idea yesterday for, not a joke, but I thought, you know what would be really interesting to do? I'm going to assemble together all of the cases of ridiculous reasons why people have not been deported. So I just Googled deportation and looked at the news from 2025 alone. And my goodness, I found ridiculous amounts of vacuous, spurious reasons why we've got criminals and rapists and paedophiles and illegals all staying here. So that put me in a really bad mood yesterday. Then I wake up and I'm flicking through all the news, lying in my bed with a nice cup of tea, preparing for the show. And it's put me in an even worse mood. And I'm going to start off with this story. It doesn't surprise me at all. Apparently the French, when they're seeing boats going to leave Calais to come here, not only are they concerned for the migrants' safety so much, they say, oh, do you know what? You might want to lighten the capacity of the boat a bit. Why don't 20 of you get off and wait for the next one? There you go, you're safe now. And when you get to the halfway point, just wait an hour, be patient, wait an hour, don't you worry. The Brits are going to be there to pick you up. I mean, zut alors.
We've known this, though, haven't we, for some time about the French and their slightly, shall we say, what's the expression? Avant-garde approach to border security when it comes to the
laissez-faire might be more appropriate.
I actually think avant-garde might be a good way of describing it, but yes, laissez-faire is probably slightly more accurate. But it's certainly a lot less draconian than it is when it comes to them policing their own southern border with Italy or Spain, for instance. It's one of those very frustrating things where, you know, you sort of juxtapose it with the suggestions from this government that they're getting tough on illegal migration across the Channel and that they're going to put extra resources into renaming a border command thing and that what we need is more cooperation with the French. And you just think, but actually it's not in their interests. And that's ultimately what this all boils down to. There's no sense of sort of solidarity or anything like that. It's not in France's interest to stop these people leaving because they don't want them just as much as we don't want them. So that's why you can't really have this system where you just assume the goodwill of your neighbors. You have to take matters into your own hands. You have to be very pragmatic about deporting people and stopping people coming in the first place. If you find yourself relying on France, I'm sorry to say you're always going to be disappointed.
Right. And this is the point. The mayor of Calais at one point said the problem is it's like El Dorado for migrants over in Britain. They all want to come to you because you just put them up in five-star hotels, you give them cars, driving lessons, playstations, yoga courses, tickets to sporting events. I mean, blimmin' heck, even I want to go to the other side of the Channel and re-enter via dinghy at this point. It sounds like a lovely life. And this is the point. When they've spoken to, we've got an article here in The Sun where they've gone and spoken to migrants about why they want to come to Britain. And they basically say, it's because you're so nice. You treat us so well. I mean, France does have a point. France might not be able to prevent the number of people traipsing over and lining up along the coastline of Calais wanting to come to Britain because they've heard we're a soft touch. And so instead of going, well, we're going to house you all here in Calais, they're going, all right, then get on the boat. If you want it so much, we're not going to get in your way. You can't really blame them.
Excuse me. This is the thing, though, isn't it? And it sort of belies logic of how things are currently going in the UK, that we continue to be actually so welcoming to people who have no real business being here. And it's an open secret the majority of these people are not refugees. They never have been. We had this back in Blair's day. Even that Labour government was prepared to say, you know, that the people sort of coming, as it was then, on the backs of lorries and inside trucks and things like that, were just trying to play the system. And now we just have it on an industrial scale. And yet, as you say, we sort of bend over backwards. We provide all sorts of things that 99% of countries in the world simply do not bother to provide. And I think it comes down to, this is the irony, because of course then we're told by many people in this country that Britain is a horrible racist place and that we all have to sort of change everything about ourselves and sort of flagellate ourselves for the evils of empire. Actually, this speaks to the fact that Britain fundamentally is a very welcoming place, a very tolerant place, and that even when people see, members of the public see people, you know, pulling the wool over the eyes of the authorities, if you like, They don't say anything because they don't want to be rude. They don't want to be offensive. They don't want to get caught up in other people's business. And it's a very strange thing that one of perhaps the biggest strengths of the British character has effectively been weaponized against them. In that they don't want to be rude or they don't want to pry into people's business. That is being used en masse by thousands of people and by the state that facilitates this to effectively allow us to get to this position where we do have millions of people in this country now who realistically probably shouldn't be here.
Right, exactly. And it is now probably nudging up over millions. I had a security briefing. I can't really go into who from or go into details of what it involved. But again, that put me in not just an angry mood, but in quite a terrified mood, because what they told me was the number of people who were coming into the country on those small boats with connections to terrorist organisations and also criminal organisations. And we know this for a fact. When I was going through making my sort of roll call of people who have not been deported, the vast number of people from organised crime, mafia bosses and so on and so forth, and the human traffickers themselves seem to be from Albania. We're supposed to be deporting a load of hardened Albanian criminals back to Albania. So far, we've only deported 8 at the cost of £500,000 each, $500,000 each. And we gave Albania a load of money to upgrade their prison system so we could send these people home. And then guess what? They're not going home because of things like chicken nuggets and I'm a male role model to some random teenage boy that my supposed girlfriend gave birth to 14 years ago. It makes a mockery of the entire system. But the problem is these people are dangerous. We have let in people who are training terrorists in this country. We've let in people who are consolidating the criminal underworld. When I walk down my street in London and I see shoplifting on an industrial scale, I know this is being run by crime gangs from the Balkans. And I don't understand, after all this time, why no government is able or willing to take the measure to say this now poses severe security threats to Britain. And therefore, we can take whatever action we like, because when it comes to defending this nation's security, people's lives, people's earnings, people's businesses, people's right to property, that trumps everything.
Yeah, I think that there is an institutional squeamishness at the heart of Britain. There's a squeamishness about confronting reality, about difficult decisions, about hard truths. And we see this not just when it comes to the migration issue. We see it when it comes to the energy issue, when it comes to defence, when it comes to things like how are we going to pay for the elderly or social care or the NHS in this country. We are almost allergic to the truth. We're not able, our political elites, our media elites are not able, not prepared to have honest conversations about these things. And that stems, I'm afraid to say, from a fear that there will be a backlash from the general public, that the general public won't like what it has, what it hears, and will punish people for telling the truth. And, to be fair, we're seeing this now with Rachel Reeves' latest financial announcements when it comes to decisions that are being taken on things like independence payments and benefits, basically. What you get is, even though an awful lot of people in this country are very much sort of sotto voce going, yes, I'm actually in favour of cutting a lot of these things. My living standards are going down. The value of the pound is going down, but my taxes are going up, and I don't see much in the way of improvement in services. The loudest voices complaining about this are people saying, oh, but it's dreadful. It's dreadful that I'm not getting money, that this person isn't getting free money, that these people aren't getting free money. It's heartless. It's cruel. Nobody sat there going, guys, you can't afford it.
Right, and this is the thing. I mean, now apparently a quarter of Britons are disabled. A quarter, right? Yeah. And I'm sorry, but there must be a lot of people out there who very much deserve welfare. I'm not saying that there aren't plenty of people listening to the show right now, might be tempted to message me and say, you've got no idea what it's like. I am so worried about what's going to happen to me, my care, or someone I care for, because the carer's allowance is being cut, because PIP payments are being restricted, and I've got genuine need. And that is disgusting to me when you add up how much we're spending on these people breaking into our country on boats, 10 to 15 billion pounds. We could basically, if we got rid of that and just sent them all to mass deportation camps straight away, pay farmers whatever they need and not make them pay inheritance tax, We could keep all the carers allowances in place. We could keep the winter fuel allowance in place, because you add all of those things up and it's about £10 billion, and we're spending a good 15 billion on people breaking into the country, giving them hotels. But at the same time, when you look at these statistics, with 2 million more people now than before the pandemic saying they can't function because of poor mental health. I have poor mental health when I open the newspapers every day and I roll into work. I'm sorry, it cannot be the case that 2 million people in a country of supposedly around 70 million, we're talking about 1 in 35 people, are just, they're too sad to work. I don't get it. If someone's genuinely got PTSD, if someone's genuinely got schizophrenia, if someone's genuinely, I believe in things like compassionate leave when someone's had a bereavement in the family. But 2 million people not able to work because they profess to being, anxious or something? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it always amuses me, incidentally, that that we're now saying that it's approximate. It's about 23% of the population, they say, has a mental illness. And it's very amusing to me because it almost directly mirrors the proportion of the electorate that voted Labour at the last general election. So I think the mystery has been solved right there. That many people voted for something, expect something different. Well, if that's not a mental illness, I don't know what is. But it's one of those things where, again, we're not prepared to have the difficult but necessary, truthful conversation about this, where it's come from and how it is you relieve the thing. Because, as you say, there are going to be a lot of people within that who are under severe mental strain. And we know that actually the pandemic and the policies put in place by the government did cause an awful lot of strain to an awful lot of people. But how it is that you get yourself from A to B, get yourself out of that sort of mental spiral into a positive, better, productive place is actually quite straightforward, and it involves lots of things around resilience. The answer is not, in fact, to prescribe people antidepressants for their whole life and then say, well, you can't work, you're sick, so here's some free money. That's never going to solve anything. But we're not prepared to have those conversations because, again, we are fearful about upsetting people, about being perceived as being rude, about being intolerant, about being heartless. And again, when society is functioning, that trait of the British people to be tolerant, understanding, trustful is a wonderful thing. When it's not, it means that people turn a blind eye to things that they need to be tackling directly.
But this is it. Society isn't functioning, which is probably why 2 million people say that they're balmy. It's not difficult to trace back to why people are getting depressed at large, why most Brits wake up every day and go, oh, God, another day in this blimmin' country. We no longer live in a high-trust society. I can't tell you how much my mood is altered when I walk to the tube and see a lot of ne'er-do-wells loitering around outside shops, leering, nicking things out of the co-op. We're also in a very self-indulgent society where during the pandemic, this whole stay at home, we're going to give you loads of money for not working, has fundamentally scrapped people's ability to be resilient. Similar with the working from home policy. It's become so normalised to not go to work and be with other people that people now see it as a human right to sit at home under their slankets. We've tanked the economy through egregious policies for the best part of 2 decades, whether it's energy policy, no policy to enable manufacturing, being part of that ridiculous trading bloc across the channel we're supposed to have nominally left. And we've got no free speech. When people want to moan about what's going on, they feel like they can't. They're smacked down because they can't let off steam in the pub. And their communities have been destroyed by mass immigration. So where once upon a time, even if life was a bit rubbish, they could go down the road to the Dog and Duck and talk about it, the Dog and Duck's probably got boarded up windows or has become a Polski sklep or a mosque.
You're hitting a lot of the nails on the head there, and I think things like deindustrialization and a lot of this actually comes down to free market policies as well. The fact that actually a lot of farmers have been undercut over the years, a lot of agricultural work in this country has gone. We often forget about that part of the fact that half of the country lives in the countryside. I know Labour has forgotten about it because they thought it'd be a wonderful idea to tax those people to the hilt. Those are the true working people left in this country. If you want to find where they are, it tends to be in the countryside, but their industry has been absolutely hammered as well. well, and all the associated industries with that. And again, at its core, difficult conversations about what it is functionally to be human. People need purpose, they need pride, they need resources. And instead, we have a country that goes, well, it'll be fine, we'll base everything on the services industry and we'll outsource that to the rest of the world. We don't need to manufacture anything, we don't need to grow anything. Energy, electricity, petrol, oh, don't worry about that. There's a green revolution coming, haven't you heard? And yes, it'll cost you a lot more money, but doesn't it feel good to be doing something for the planet? Even as the rest of the world, having trodden down that path a little bit, goes, oh, do you know what, actually, maybe this isn't the best idea we've ever had. And Britain, of course, alone in this sort of island of oil and gas and coal on which it's built, has decided, actually, we don't need to do that anymore, pushing up prices, as you say, making businesses less competitive, making it less possible for people to get jobs, to start their own businesses. They have to pay even more money. That's sort of at the heart of all of this, if you want to sort of drill down into what's going wrong. And again, difficult conversations. Kemi Badenoch, I'm not a fan of Kemi Badenoch, but she was at the very least right to say that the race to net zero is a fantasy and it's not really possible, given that Britain wants to get growth going again. She hasn't come out with any viable solutions, alternatives that I've heard yet. I understand why. But still, it was a start to have a major party leader of the two major parties actually saying, guys, this is nuts.
No, exactly. I couldn't agree more. Benedict Spence, thank you ever so much. It's always great catching up with you.